The air in the boardroom was always electric with possibility, a scent compounded of expensive leather and the raw sugar rush of success. My best friend Jessica and I had built Aura Luxe Cosmetics from a kitchen counter operation into a multi-million-dollar force. We were inseparable, two women driven by the same vision, sharing the same ambition. We were a team, a family, and our partnership felt unbreakable. We were on the cusp of the biggest deal of our lives, a $50 million acquisition offer that would secure our future. It was just another Tuesday. Jessica and I were scheduled to meet with the acquisition firm's lawyers. I walked into the board meeting 20 minutes before the attorneys arrived, expecting a final pep talk. Instead, the room was cold. Jessica was seated opposite me, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. Beside her was our lead investor, Mr. Sterling, looking grim. "Ashley," Mr. Sterling began, his voice flat, "we have decided to go in a different direction. Effective immediately, the board has elected to terminate your employment and remove you from the CEO position." The shock was so profound I couldn't breathe. My company, the brand I had built from nothing, the formula I had perfected. Terminated? I looked at Jessica, searching for an explanation, a defense, anything. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, a panicked, guilty flicker before she stared resolutely at the mahogany table. She had backstabbed me. "I'm Ashley. I believe the highest form of success was built on trust and shared vision. I quickly learned that for some, success is simply a pedestal built on the ruins of their closest relationships." "Tell me, where are you listening to this story from?"
"I hope your partnerships are built on a foundation stronger than mine was." The ensuing chaos was a blur. They had a mountain of meticulously prepared paperwork detailing my supposed mismanagement, erratic behavior, and resistance to necessary growth. It was all lies, carefully constructed by Jessica and Mr. Sterling to justify my removal right before the acquisition closed, allowing them to split my massive payout. David, our corporate lawyer who was supposed to be my counsel, handed me a final severance package with a grim face. He, too, was in on the betrayal. I was escorted out of my own office. I left the building carrying a single box of personal belongings, the metallic taste of betrayal choking me. For the first 2 weeks, I was paralyzed. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The emotional spiral was devastating. Shock, despair, profound grief.
I had lost my company, my life savings, which were still tied up in company stock and investments, and my best friend, all in one brutal, calculated blow. I was lost, unsure if I had the strength to fight back against the combined might of my former partner, the board, and the corporate lawyers who now saw me as a liability. But the paralysis was broken by a single encrypted email that landed in my personal inbox, an address Jessica and David had forgotten to deactivate. The subject line was simply, "Not everyone jumped ship." The sender was Marcus, the head of product development, a brilliant chemist who had worked closely with me on every new line. Marcus was loyal to the mission, not the money. The email was terse. He suspected foul play and warned me that Jessica was attempting to alter the original formulations to cut costs, potentially ruining the brand's integrity before the sale. He concluded with a chilling sentence, "Jessica and David are moving fast. They're selling your original formulas, Ashley. You need legal help, not a therapist." The realization was a sharp injection of adrenaline. They weren't just taking my job, they were stealing my life's work and destroying the company's integrity for a quick cash out. My despair instantly crystallized into cold, focused fury. The fight was back on. I immediately called Ms. Mia Thorne, a formidable corporate litigator known for tearing apart white-collar fraud cases. I presented her with everything: the original partnership agreement, the board minutes, the suspicious timing of my firing, and Marcus's cryptic email.
Miss Thorne looked at the documentation and smiled grimly. "They made 2 classic mistakes, Ashley. They moved too fast, and they kept key people out of the loop. They needed your vote for certain transactions, and they definitely needed Marcus's loyalty for the formulas." The strategic escalation began immediately. I knew I couldn't storm the castle alone. I needed the loyalists. I reached out discreetly to key members of my former team, using private channels I had established long ago: Marcus in product development, Sophia in logistics, and Ben in accounting, the 3 people who handled the most sensitive, irreplaceable parts of Aura Luxe. Sophia confirmed that Jessica and David were using shell companies to push the acquisition through quickly, bypassing standard due diligence.
Ben in accounting, a quiet, meticulous man, had managed to retain copies of the original, unamended corporate bylaws and a key financial audit that proved I was performing well, directly contradicting the board's fabricated termination claims. The most critical information, the micro hook that sealed Jessica's fate, came from Marcus. He revealed that Jessica and David hadn't just fired me, they had concocted a scheme to illegally sell the proprietary ingredient list, the core intellectual property I created, to the acquisition firm before the deal officially closed, essentially double-dipping and exposing Oralux to massive patent infringement lawsuits down the line. To do this, they needed to illegally access my personal IP files, which they had done using forged digital credentials. Jessica thought she was brilliant. She thought firing me solved her problem. She didn't realize that in my absence, my true assets, the loyalty of my team, and the meticulous nature of my own paperwork were working against her. The quiet preparation had begun. Part 2. The poetic justice with the evidence from my loyalists. Miss Thorne went to war. The legal battle was not a messy divorce. It was a surgical strike against corporate malfeasance. We filed an emergency injunction, freezing the acquisition proceedings and demanding a full independent audit of Oralux, citing gross breaches of fiduciary duty, intellectual property theft, and corporate fraud committed by Jessica and David. The move sent shockwaves through the company. Jessica was suddenly under intense scrutiny. She started behaving erratically, attempting to fire Marcus and Sophia, but the injunction prevented her from making any major personnel changes.
Her incompetent greed was finally catching up to her. The audit was the moment of explosion. Ben's carefully preserved accounting records exposed the board's fabricated charges against me. Marcus's evidence proved that Jessica and David had been negotiating the illegal side sale of the IP, a move that not only constituted corporate fraud, but also massive personal financial gain at the company's expense. The forgery used to access my files was traced back to an IP address associated with David's personal server. The board, led by the panicking Mr. Sterling, realized they were about to be implicated in a massive fraud case. They moved immediately to save themselves, completely abandoning Jessica and David. I was reinstated as CEO 2 months after being fired.
It was an unprecedented victory, won not through brute force, but through superior strategy and the loyalty of the few good people left in the company. The moment of poetic justice was delivered on a rainy Thursday morning. I was back in my office, sitting at my old desk, reviewing the internal investigation report. David, the corporate lawyer who signed off on my severance package, had already been disbarred and was facing civil charges. His career and his reputation were irreparably destroyed. Jessica, however, faced a more complete devastation. Her actions went beyond firing me. They constituted grand theft of intellectual property and securities fraud. The investigation revealed that she had used the company's funds to pay David for his legal manipulation. The state moved to press criminal charges. I didn't have to see her. I didn't have to speak to her.
I simply read the final paragraph of the internal memo. Jessica Miller was arrested this morning for conspiracy to commit fraud and grand theft. She thought she could steal my company and my life's work and walk away a millionaire. Instead, her greed gifted me the most powerful revenge, the clarity of a clean break and the complete documented destruction of her career and freedom. I didn't gloat, but I felt a profound sense of closure. I called Marcus, Sophia, and Ben into my office. I didn't just thank them. I gave them massive raises, guaranteed autonomy, and equity packages that tied their success directly to the company's future. They were the true architects of Oralux's survival. A week later, I stood in the boardroom, now negotiating a slightly smaller, cleaner acquisition deal, a deal built entirely on ethical terms. I looked around the table.
Mr. Sterling was gone. The board had been cleaned out, and the people seated next to me were the ones who had risked everything to do the right thing. They thought I was weak. They thought I was disposable. They didn't understand that when you build something with passion and honesty, the people who believe in the mission will always protect the source. The multi-million-dollar company was back under my control. My best friend ended up in prison. And that's when I finally realized trust is a currency, and betrayal always carries a criminal interest rate.